Blood-chilling screams cut through the silent forest. Alexander Reed stopped his expensive car instantly. The sound came from deep in the woods. His heart raced as he ran toward the cries. Nothing prepared him for what he found: two small girls with dirty faces and torn clothes, chained to a massive tree. Their eyes, filled with terror and hope, locked onto his. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more channel. The screams pierced through the morning fog like knives. Alexander Reed slammed on his brakes, the tires of his luxury SUV screeching against the lonely forest road. He had been driving to clear his mind, to escape the memories of his wife's death that haunted their mansion, when the desperate cries reached him through his half-open window. "Help! Please, someone help us!" Alexander's heart hammered against his chest. He hadn't heard such terror since the night he lost Eliza to cancer 3 years ago. Without hesitation, he jumped out of his car and ran toward the sound, his expensive shoes sinking into the mud. The voice sounded young, too young to be alone in these woods. "Where are you?" he shouted, pushing through thick bushes. "Here. We're here." The voice cracked in desperation. When Alexander broke through the final wall of branches, what he saw made his blood freeze. Two little girls, identical twins with dirty blonde hair and tear-stained faces, were chained to a massive oak tree. Their small wrists were raw and bleeding from the rusty metal cutting into their skin. They couldn't have been more than 7 years old. "Oh my God," Alexander whispered, rushing toward them. "Who did this to you?" One of the girls sobbed while the other, seemingly stronger, spoke through chattering teeth. "Our stepfather. He said we cost too much money. He said no one would find us here." Alexander felt rage bubble up inside him. As a father who had lost his son to the same cancer that took his wife, he knew the preciousness of a child's life. He had spent the last 3 years building his tech empire into a billion-dollar company, trying to numb his pain with work and wealth. "I'm going to get you out of here," he promised, already pulling at his phone. "What are your names?" "I'm Lily," said the braver one. "This is Lucy. Please hurry. He might come back." Alexander called 911, then began examining the chains. They were secured with an old padlock. Without thinking twice, he grabbed a rock and began smashing it against the lock, each strike fueled by a fury he hadn't felt since his family was torn apart. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, Alexander had freed the girls and wrapped them in his expensive cashmere coat. They clung to him like he was their lifeline. "Sir, we need to take the children now," an officer said, approaching cautiously. "No," Lily screamed, gripping Alexander's shirt. "Don't let them take us away." Lucy, who hadn't spoken a word since being freed, began to tremble violently. Something broke inside Alexander at that moment. The protective instinct he thought had died with his son roared back to life. "I'm coming with them," he told the officer. "And I want to know what's going to happen to these girls." The following days passed in a blur of police stations, hospitals, and social services offices. The twins' mother had died in childbirth, and their stepfather, now arrested, had been abusing them for years before abandoning them in the forest when he lost his job. Alexander couldn't shake the image of those two small faces looking up at him with trust. He hired the best lawyers in the country and made it his mission to ensure the girls would never suffer again. "Mr. Reed," said Miss Thompson, the social worker assigned to the case, "the girls have no other family. They'll be placed in the foster system." Alexander straightened his tie, a nervous habit from his business meetings. "What if I took them in?" Miss Thompson's eyebrows shot up. "You? A single father who runs a multinational corporation? Do you have any idea how demanding 2 traumatized children can be?" "I lost my son Jake when he was 6, Alexander said quietly, looking out the window at the gray sky. "And my wife shortly after. I know about loss and trauma. I have the resources to give these girls everything they need: therapy, education, a stable home." "Resources aren't everything, Mr. Reed." "I know," he replied, turning back to her with determination in his eyes. "But love is. And I already love those girls." The temporary custody arrangement was challenging from the very first night. Alexander converted his home office into a bedroom, filling it with 2 beds, stuffed animals, and night lights. But when bedtime came, the twins refused to be separated. "We always sleep together," Lily explained, holding her sister's hand. "The monsters come if we're alone." Alexander nodded, understanding the monsters weren't imaginary. "Then you'll stay together?" he promised, pushing the bed side by side. That night, he sat in a chair between their beds, watching over them as they slept. Lucy woke screaming 3 times from nightmares. Each time, Alexander was there, his large hands gentle as he stroked her hair and whispered that she was safe. By morning there were dark circles under his eyes, but he felt more alive than he had in years. His personal assistant was shocked when Alexander announced he would be working from home indefinitely. "But sir, the Tokyo merger can wait," Alexander cut her off. "Or proceed without me. I have more important matters now." The corporate board was furious. Shares dipped when rumors spread that the famously workaholic CEO was distracted by a personal matter. Alexander didn't care. For the first time since losing his family, something mattered more than money. The girl's recovery was painfully slow. Lucy rarely spoke, communicating mostly through whispers to her sister. Lily was fiercely protective, watching Alexander with suspicious eyes whenever he came near Lucy. The breakthrough came unexpectedly 2 months into their stay. Alexander was in the kitchen, attempting to make pancakes, something his wife had always handled. He cursed as the batter stuck to the pan, creating a charred mess. A small giggle made him turn around. Lucy stood in the doorway, a tiny smile on her face. "You're doing it wrong," she said softly. Alexander's heart soared at the sound of her voice addressed directly to him. "Will you show me how?" Lucy hesitated, then nodded, approaching the stove cautiously. "My mom taught me before she went to heaven. You need to wait for the bubbles before you flip." Alexander watched in wonder as the tiny girl confidently demonstrated. Lily joined them minutes later, her usual wariness temporarily forgotten as they created a towering stack of misshapen but edible pancakes. As they sat eating together, syrup dripping onto the expensive dining table, Alexander noticed Lily studying him. "Are you going to be our new dad?" she asked bluntly. Alexander nearly choked on his pancake. "Would you want me to be?" The twins exchanged one of their silent communications. Lucy nodded slightly. "Maybe," Lily said cautiously. "But our last dad was nice at first too. Then he changed." Alexander set down his fork. "I promise you both I will never, ever hurt you. And I will never send you away. If you want to stay with me, I'll fight to make that happen. Even if your company gets mad?" Lucy asked quietly. Alexander smiled. "The company can survive without me. But I'm finding that I can't survive without you too." The custody hearing was scheduled for a cold December morning, exactly 6 months after Alexander found the girls. His lawyers assured him the case was strong. He had provided a stable home, the girls were thriving under his care, and his financial situation was unquestionable. But on the morning of the hearing, disaster struck. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, threatening to vote him out if he didn't appear to address the company's plummeting stock prices. "This is your life's work, Alexander," his CFO reminded him over the phone. "Everything you built after losing Eliza and Jake. You can't throw it away." Alexander looked at the twins, dressed in matching blue dresses for court, their hair neatly braided. Lucy was showing Lily a drawing she'd made, a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. "My family," she'd written in wobbly letters. "You're right, Richard," Alexander said into the phone. "It is everything I built after losing my family. But I've found a new family now." He hung up and took the girls' hands. "Ready?" The courthouse was intimidating with its towering columns and stern-faced officials. The twins clung to Alexander's hands as they entered the courtroom. Miss Thompson approached them with a grave expression. "Mr. Reed, there's been a complication. The girl's maternal grandmother has appeared. She's filing for custody." Alexander felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Grandmother? They told me they had no family." She claims she didn't know about the girls until recently. She saw the news story about their rescue. Alexander looked across the courtroom at the elderly woman sitting stiffly in a floral dress. She didn't look unkind, but she was a stranger to the twins, a stranger with a biological claim he couldn't match. The judge called the hearing to order. The proceedings began with the grandmother's testimony. "I didn't know my daughter had given birth before she died," the woman explained tearfully. "Their father, my ex-son-in-law, kept it from me out of spite. I only learned about my granddaughters when I saw their faces on the news. I may be old, but I'm their blood. I can give them a proper family." When it was Alexander's turn to speak, he looked at the twins, who watched him with fearful eyes. "Your Honor," he began, "6 months ago I was a man who had everything and nothing. Wealth beyond imagination, but an empty house and a heart full of grief. Then I heard the cries of 2 little girls who needed help." He paused, gathering his courage. "I'm not their blood. I can't claim any biological connection. But every night for the past 6 months, I've been the one holding Lucy when her nightmares come. I've been teaching Lily how to ride a bike and watching her grow brave enough to try without training wheels. I've seen them laugh again after everything they've endured." His voice broke. "I lost a child once. I know the pain of having someone irreplaceable torn from your life. I'm begging you not to inflict that pain on any of us." The judge looked thoughtful. "I'd like to hear from the children themselves." Lily stepped forward first, brave as always. "We want to stay with Alex. He makes the monsters go away." Lucy, usually silent, moved to stand beside her sister. "He's our dad now," she said simply. "We chose him and he chose us." The grandmother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. After a tense deliberation, the judge returned. "This is an unusual case," she admitted. "But I believe the best interest of these children lies in stability and the bonds they've formed. Mr. Reed, I'm granting you full adoption rights. However," she added, turning to the grandmother, "I strongly encourage regular visitation with their maternal grandmother." Alexander felt the twins crash into him, their arms wrapping around his waist in a fierce hug. Over their heads, he met the grandmother's eyes and nodded slightly. There was room in their lives for more love. 5 years passed. The Reed mansion, once silent and solemn, now echoed with laughter and the occasional argument over whose turn it was to choose the movie for family night. Alexander had stepped down as CEO, taking a position on the board that allowed him to be home for dinner every night. His former colleagues didn't understand his choice, but he never regretted it. On the twins' 12th birthday, he took them to visit the spot in the forest where he had found them. It was Lily's idea, brave Lily, who now captained her soccer team and stood up to bullies at school. "I want to remember," she said, "so I never forget how far we've come." Lucy, still quieter but no longer silent, nodded in agreement. "And to thank the tree," she added with the subtle humor she'd developed. They stood together at the massive oak, now adorned not with chains but with a small metal plaque Alexander had commissioned, "where 3 lives changed forever." "Do you think Mom and Jake can see us?" Lucy asked suddenly, looking up at the patches of sky visible through the branches. Alexander felt his throat tighten. The twins knew all about Eliza and Jake now, had seen their pictures and heard their stories. Sometimes Alexander swore he caught glimpses of his son in the way Lucy concentrated on a puzzle, or his wife in Lily's determined expression. "I think they can," he said, wrapping an arm around each girl. "And I think they're happy that we found each other." "Even though we're not really related?" Lily asked, an old insecurity surfacing. Alexander knelt down, looking into the identical faces that had become the center of his world. "Family isn't about blood," he said firmly. "It's about who stays to fight the monsters with you." Lucy smiled, the traumatized girl from the forest now barely visible in her confident expression. "Then we're the strongest family ever." As they walked back to the car, hand in hand, Alexander reflected on how a moment of horror had transformed into his salvation. The chains that once bound 2 little girls to a tree had somehow freed him from the prison of his grief. And though the journey hadn't been easy, there were still nightmares sometimes, still days when the past cast long shadows. They faced it all together. The millionaire who had everything had found the one thing money couldn't buy, a second chance at being a father. And the abandoned twins had found the one thing their tragic start in life couldn't take away, the capacity to trust and love again. Sometimes, Alexander realized, the most broken beginnings led to the most beautiful endings.